We are just about to get started. Awesome. Good to hear, Brian. So today we are going to be talking about list objects, and this is actually the first of a series of webinars that are going to focus on some of the fundamentals of ColdFusion. So if you're coming in maybe from another language, or you just want to brush up on stuff, or maybe you want to see how things are done more in the script side of things versus tags, that's kind of where we're going. There's not going to be any tags really anywhere in here that you'll be seeing. This is all being done in script. Covering a couple of things. Yes, this will be recorded. So you'll be able to catch this if for whatever reason you need to leave early or you have friends who are interested. This will be on our YouTube channel probably tomorrow. We've been really good about getting this up there and out. And the next thing is I'm running solo today, so I don't have someone watching for questions in the text. If you have a question for me, I'll be taking them at the very end. Please put them into the Q&A, and that way I can have them all collected there. I won't have to worry about scrolling back up. So definitely appreciate that. So let's get started. All right. So what are we going to be talking about today? So today I'm just going to start out with a little bit of an intro. Most of you folks know who I am, but just in case you forgot since yesterday, we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about what a list is. And that's really important here. We're going to talk about lists in terms of what it is just generally, but also what it is in the particular context of Adobe ColdFusion, and talk a little bit about best practices and anti-patterns for the use of lists as well. Lists are definitely one of those things that are awesome and easy to use, but also really easy to abuse. And you need to know when to sort of move the structure into a different structure. So we'll talk about that. And then we are going to actually dive into the functions themselves. And if we have time, we'll do some Q&A. Otherwise, we can have you guys email me. I can get you back the info. So who am I? I am Mark Takata. I'm the Senior Adobe ColdFusion Evangelist. I've been here for 4 years now. I just had my 4-year anniversary with Adobe. So that's pretty fun and awesome. I've been doing this for 30 years, programming in a variety of languages. I know a bunch of them. At this point, I've lost count. It's more than a dozen. And I currently live in West Sacramento, which oddly enough is west of Sacramento. So very important. West Sacramento is not Sacramento. We're not even in the same county. So I don't know who thought that was a great idea. Anyway, so what's a list, right? Like what is a list? So at their very core, lists are strings. Okay. In ColdFusion, though, they're not just strings. They're strings plus, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's important to understand that in ColdFusion, lists are considered first-class citizens. What does that mean? What does first-class citizen mean? Well, it means that there are functions that are built into ColdFusion that specifically treat lists as data structures. Okay. In a lot of languages, you can do things like you can split on a comma and then use that to iterate through the objects, but often you're pushing those into other data objects. You're converting a list to something else before you can do something. In CF, actually, you can just use the list. Now you can convert, and we'll look at a couple of conversion functions that are built in, but you don't have to often, and that's really the power of lists. And in fact, there's 26 list-specific built-in functions in CF. The other thing to know is since lists still are considered a string, you can actually use a lot of string functions on lists as well if you want to get frisky with it. And we'll look a little bit about that, but for the most part, it's much more powerful to use lists as lists. Now, one thing to note, multi-dimensional, I should say lists, multi-dimensional lists, because lists are just strings, are not really supported, okay? And what do I mean by that? So if you have an array that's multi-dimensional, you can actually access one of the lower dimensions all kind of in the same call, right? You can do like bracket 0, bracket whatever. That's the one thing that ColdFusion doesn't actually allow. So a string is a data object, but it's a data object that's flat. Now you can put lists of lists, and we'll talk about that a little bit as far as patterns and anti-patterns in a tiny bit. And I absolutely have done this. I've done lists of lists all over the place. And this is where it starts getting a little fuzzy in terms of what to do and what not to do. But it's supported. All you have to do is you have to call the function again. And so this is now where you get into like optimization, architectural efficiency. Are you processing millions and millions of records? Does it make sense to just convert those records, if they're multidimensional in some way, to a different structure and then use a different thing? It's your call, really. And some of that will require testing. But the final thing is, so lists are delimited, right? That's what a list is. A list is object, whether that's numeric or string, like bunny or the number 1. And then a delimiter. Almost in every case, it's very common, the delimiter is comma. Okay. And in ColdFusion actually just assumes that the delimiter is comma. That's the default. And you don't have to put in like, oh, the delimiter for this is comma as long as it's comma. Now, if it's not a comma, if it's a dot, if it's a pipe, right? If it's a letter, it can be a letter, it can be anything almost, then you do have to put that in. And one of the little tricks that I'll mention a little bit is you can actually use spaces as delimiters as well. All right, so what's not a list then, right? There's a lot of things that people think of that look a lot like lists, right? And if you get drunk enough, you might be able to argue that in some ways they are lists, but they are not. They are categorically defined not as lists. And the first one, which is the one that you would think, oh no, that's totally a list, JSON objects, right? JSON objects, they seem to have delimiters that separate the pieces and they kind of feel listy, but they're not. And the reason why is the difference between delimitation and demarcation. So delimits occur in between list items. Demarcations actually create spaces around each object, which then could have delimiters inside of it. And that's the difference. That's what a JSON actually is. It's a demarcated, delimited data object. It's kind of its own thing. XML is the same way. You've got tags. Those tags have left and right things. So that's really the big difference. And now you can do a little bit of finagling with like creating JSON and doing that. You have to be really careful when doing that. And it's much easier and safer to convert and do a serialization, one of the built-in serialization functions in ColdFusion, than to try to like, oh, if I replace this with this and put this and this and I throw it all up in the air, it'll fall onto the table and look like JSON. Don't do that. Something will go horribly wrong and you won't know what went wrong. Arrays and structs, obviously, also, again, they're separated out into their own things. Now this one's fun. This one's fun. So I don't know if you're familiar with this concept of you remember that a thing definitely happened, right? It's called the Mandela effect, where you're positive that it was the Berenstain Bears. And it's actually the Berenstain Bears, right? Things like that, where you remember it. So I swear that you could just throw a string into list functions and set nothing as the delimiter and you'd be able to iterate against it. Nope, you cannot do that. It doesn't matter what you put into it, no matter what you throw into it. A non-delimited string cannot be iterated against as a list. Now, it is an iterable object, so you can actually use a foreign and set a string, and it'll go and it'll take each individual character and process a loop against it. But you can't use list functions to do that. It's weird. I don't know why. I don't know if anybody else remembers that, but it absolutely doesn't work. Now, I will say this is the part where we can thumb wrestle over this later. There's a lie here. Strings with no delimiters, actually, it is a list. It's a list with one member. And if you throw a single non-delimited string um, into a list function, that's actually how ColdFusion will act. It will act as though there is a data object that's a list with one item in position one. Because remember, lists always start at one, not zero. Right. So when should you use a list? Well, and this might get a little bit controversial here. I think really simple, basic scenarios, right? Places where you know you're not going to have complex content, you're not going to have delimiter issues, because that's usually what comes up, right? Like, okay, I have data here, but there's a potential for a comma. All right, now I need to search for, now I'm going to potentially have to do a delimiter, a different delimiter. I'm going to have to like mess with the structure of this. It's going to get really maybe complicated. That's difficult. An example of when this would work, though, is the form scope. So the form scope passes all the field names in the page to the next page as a comma delimited list. And you cannot have a comma in a form field name. It's not supported. So technically, you're good to go, right? If you need to loop through that, you can just use a list. You don't have to convert it to something else. So this is an example. So if you know the data is in a particular format, cool. Another one is if you're just passing stuff through, and again, it should be simple, but like, you get a list that's being sent somewhere else, and you just need, I don't know, like a count of the items, right? Like, what's the length of this? You just need to do like one thing. Usually, like non-destructive is a good thing, because even if there's a comma and you're off by one, you have to make that determination. Is that okay? And the one that I use it for a lot is prototyping. Like, you just throw it out there, get it to work. They're quick and easy. And if you need to refactor to something more, like you get to a point, and you're like, man, I wish I could have a multidimensional object here, or something like that. There's a delimiter issue. You're not sure. There's input potentially from outside sources like your users. They could absolutely throw a comma, and you don't want to escape it, right? Or convert it to HTML safe something. So then I'll do it, and I'll throw it up there, get it in front of my users, do some iterations, and if it works, great. If I need to refactor, it's super easy, because since it's a first-class citizen, there's built-in functions for arrays, for structs, for all sorts of other things that you can use. And it's an easy move over, but it lets you get it in front of your clients faster. So that's a good place to use it. When shouldn't you use a list? So I covered a little bit of that, but the big one to really focus on is there's inherent issues with delimiting, right? Things get things get really funky really fast, really complex quickly, and a lot of the times you start playing okay, let me either swap delimiters, change delimiters, escape delimiters game. Usually, if that's the point that you're at, punt. Go to an array, convert it. It's fine. Or change the data structure that's coming in to an array. Do whatever you can. Throw it out. And as I mentioned before, lists of lists. I have been yelled at for using lists of lists. It's one of those things, you either love it or hate it. I've fallen onto the side of, I will use it sparingly if I feel it's a really great use case. Very specifically, if it's for just like one item that I need to split on a known delimiter, like I know the structure is going to be this particular way, which brings me to my favorite thing, clever delimiters. There's actually a great article by Ben Nadal. If you Google like Ben Nadal list delimiters, you'll find it, where he talks about how his company used to split full name into first and last name, using the space between the two as a delimiter. Awesome, right? So cool. You could just have one field that's full name, and if you need to take that and put it into a different structure, if you're ETLing it into a different thing you're pushing it to, you split it. Super simple, right? Right up until Mary Kate comes along, right? Like right up until someone with 2 names or 3 names or junior or something comes along and messes up your delimiting game. And suddenly the problem is, if you're pushing that data into somewhere else, another database or things like, you're actually creating data integrity issues, and it's bad, right? Like you're making it worse than it was coming in. Yes, Vanda, that's a great point. Brian Lang says Dutch names like Vanda something. That's a huge one. That's 3, right? Like there's 2 different spaces there. It would split it even before you get to the last name. It would split it and do weird things. So I would say, while clever and like teehee, like, like one of those silly ColdFusion tricks is there, I would never really push something like that to production. It's far too easy for really bad things to happen really quickly. So let's play with code, because we have a lot of stuff. We have 26 functions to get into. So what I'm going to be doing right now is I'm going to be going through this pretty fast. I'm going to be giving you the more simple and basic examples, just to give you an idea, generally speaking, what each one can do. Otherwise, we'll be here for 4 hours. However, all of this code will be on GitHub in the Adobe ColdFusion, all one word, GitHub under webinars. There's going to be a webinar in there, ColdFusion Fundamentals lists. This will be here. My PowerPoint will be here. You can feel free to ask me questions on stuff as well. But let's start with list append. All right. Oops, that's not what I want. You guys need to see it. All right. So what is list append? So list append takes an item, a piece of data, and it drops it to the end of the list, not the beginning, right? So this is really useful for like building stuff, adding stuff. The way it looks is list append, right? The name of the list, the value, and as I mentioned earlier, potentially a custom delimiter that is not comma, right? Because it's going to assume that it's actually comma. So here we have a code sample. We've got apple, banana, and orange. We're going to create new list. Sorry for this not looping, but it would be like super long. We're going to create a new list using list append, original list, and we're just going to add grape to that. And that looks like this: apple, banana, orange, grape. And that's the output. Something I want to mention real quick, and we will we'll get into this in a little bit, is I had someone tell me like, oh, well, ColdFusion is not that unique. Python has lists too, and they're first-class citizens in Python. And they're not wrong. But I could make the argument, and please don't hate me, every Python developer on the planet, the thing that they call a list is not really a list. It's something else altogether. It's list-like. It kind of has list-like qualities. But because Python is a strongly typed language, lists in Python are actually demarcated. So there we go. Instantaneously, that goes out. And then if it's a string, they're surrounded by quotes, delimiter, either another quote, or if they're numeric, then you can just put the number. Whereas in ColdFusion, you can just put string, numeric, Batman symbol, whatever, it doesn't matter, commas, because ColdFusion is really good at doing active casting, right? It's duck typed. So if it's numeric, It's pretty good at casting. Now, I would suggest, and this is a little bit of a pain, but it's very useful. If you're gonna do anything with that number and you need it to act numeric, valid or Java cast it, just to be sure, right? So anyway, just wanted to mention that because as you can see here, here I'm actually creating a list of numbers, and this is getting custom delimiters. So this is changing the delimiter to a pipe and adding something. Okay. So there you go. That is list append. List prepend. Any guesses? Exactly like list append, except instead of going to the end of the list, we're going to the beginning, right? So if you need to add a header, for example, something like that. If you're creating lists where you need the newest thing to show up first and you don't want to do any kind of funky, like reverse order type of things like that, this is the way to do it. Exactly the same. Name of the list, the value, custom delimiter. We got banana, orange, and grape. We're going to add apple, and we're going to prepend it so it comes to the beginning of the list. Boom, done. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Same thing here. High priority task goes to the front of the task list. We're going to use prepend versus append. And fix critical bug. I'm going to send this to my team. I'm kidding. Don't kill me, guys. All right. List insert at. All right. This is very, very useful. So this allows you to take a data item and drop it into a list in a particular position. Now, this is one of the places where suddenly it becomes clear. We're exposing a little bit of what ColdFusion is doing under the hood. Lists have indices, right? If you have 5 items, ColdFusion actually understands that each item has an index, and you can actually either call things by that index, as we'll see in a little bit, or you can insert something in a particular position, and CF will actually shift all the indices. So here, if you need to insert things in a particular place, that's not the beginning or the end, right? Because we have append and prepend. Maintaining sorted order, things like that, building hierarchical or categorical lists where stuff has to get in a particular position. So list insert at, name of the list, the position in the list. Remember, lists start at 1. The value and the custom delimiter. All right, so here we've got apple, orange, grape. We're gonna put banana in at position 2. So currently orange is in position 2. There we go. Apple, banana, orange. So it sits and it comes in at position 2. Oh, there's an error. Don't look at that. I'll fix that before I put it up there. I don't know how that happened. All right. List delete at. Very similar, right? Indexed. You've got indices in there. You want to, you know that the item in position 2 or 3 or whatever needs to be removed, and you can do it here. So name of the list and just the position. You don't need a value because we're just deleting something, and a custom delimiter. We've got 4 items, apple, banana, orange, grape, and we're going to get rid of the thing in position 2, which is currently banana. And there you go. Apple, orange, grape, banana's gone. I ate it. I'm sorry. I was hungry. It was delicious. Actually, I'm not sorry. It was delicious. List set at. So this is the combination potentially of list delete at and list insert at. So if you know that the item in position 2 or 3 or whatever, position N, has now changed to something else, right? So for example, you have a list of status codes, and you know that the list of the status code at position 3 needs to go from red to green, right? Instead of getting rid of it and replacing it, you can put in the list name, the position, and the new value that's going to take the place of that, and then potentially a custom delimiter. So here I want to change banana to pear because I want to, I don't want to take in so much sugar. Like pears have a little bit better for like glucose levels and stuff, right? And there you go. Apple, pear, orange. Just kidding. Eat your bananas. They're good for you. Lots of potassium. Hey, we're healthy here. And list change delims, not these limbs, delimiters. So I mentioned earlier, one of the things that you can do to try and mitigate delimiter problems is just change delimiters, right? Like, hey, there might be commas in here. Let's use a pipe. Yeah, sure, maybe. But again, if it's in the ASCII set, someone could potentially insert it. So you really got to be sure. However, again, here we can actually use this. This is really great actually for someone who who decided that they were going to use a different delimiter, or maybe maybe all your stuff is delimited by pipes and you're getting data from another source instead of trying to do some kind of replace, regex, whatever type of thing. Yes, thank you, Brian. Yeah, pipes instead of commas are super useful when there's known commas in the data. Pipes are one of my favorite delimiters. I'll be honest, I really like them. Generally speaking, pipes exist, obviously, like in SQL, you'll see it show up occasionally. But yeah, in a lot of data, you just don't see them show up very often, and they're a great thing to use. So here, if we want to change the delimiters in a particular list, and if we're assuming it's a comma, don't worry about the old delimiter. But if we're changing from blah to blah, put in the old delimiter, put in the new delimiter. So we're going to go ahead and change this list, which has commas, to have a pipe, my favorite. And there you go. And it replaces them. Right? So pretty simple stuff, right? But these are powerful. Like when combined, their powers combined, right? You can do a lot. You could do a lot of really, really, really cool things with it. All right. So let's look at list retrieval. So actually getting data back. We're going to start with list first, ironically enough, or non-ironically enough. I don't know, whichever it is. So list first, just gets the first element of the list, the element in position 1, without having to pass in 1. Just a little bit of a shortcut. If you need to pull like a header from, that like there's a comma delimited list and the first item is a header or a title, something like that. There you go. You can pull the first one. This is also useful if, let's say, you're doing queues and you're running through it and you're taking off the top, right? You're knocking off the top. So you're taking the first one, processing, removing, taking off the first one, processing, removing. There's another one that this works really well for. Easy enough. You just pass the list name, potentially custom delimiter, into list first. Apple, banana, orange, grape. If I get list first, what's it going to be? Our favorite phone company, or maybe not. Apple. There you go. And there it is. All right. Same here. We've got a custom delimiter, the pipe. I'm going to pass in all these. You'll notice there's dots in it, right? Like, got to be careful. Make sure your delimiter's not a dot in this case. Or maybe you can. Maybe this is a great example here. So here you go. Here's an example of a list of lists, potentially, because you can act as though config.txt is a list, the first element of being the name, the second element of being the type of file, right? So theoretically, you could drop this into a list, iterate across it, then each element you could drop into list first, list last, and grab those two things. Bob's your uncle. So there you go. Fun with lists. List last. Exactly the same as list first, but the opposite. We're going to grab the last thing in there. So as I just mentioned, file extensions, right? Be careful when doing things like URLs. It always gets you. Those folks in the UK always get you. Phineas asked, can a delimiter be more than a single character? Yeah, I think it can actually. I think you can set. It's a good question. I'll play with that at the end, Phineas. Could you drop that into the Q&A, and then I'll go and I'll play and I'll see. I think the answer is yes. I think you can pass in 2 characters. Does anyone know that off the top of their head? Brian, you guys know that? Can someone test it for me? I'm pretty sure, Chris. I'm pretty sure you can use multiple characters, which is one way. Like you could think, like, oh, I'll just I'll use multiple characters, and then it's less likely to occur. But trust me, it'll randomly occur in the worst possible time. All right, list last. So again, we're just going to pass the list, potentially a custom delimiter. We're going to grab the last item. In this case, it's going to be grape. And in here, we've got document, .report, .final. Look familiar? .pdf. I want to know what kind of file it is. So I'm going to grab the last thing with a delimiter of dot, and it's going to tell me that it's a PDF file. So there you go. Now, this only works, of course, when your extensions show, inside of the file system, which generally speaking they do. Going back, let's see. ColdFusion processes each occurrence of each character as a delimiter. Thank you, Brian. Okay, so no, it looks like it will use each individual one individually to check for them as a delimiter. So looks like potentially that's not going to work. Or maybe it will, actually. I don't know if that. Anyway, I don't know. Again, if you have to use multiple characters as a delimiter, we're kind of falling into that type of thing. Like, do we want to do that? Is it better to split? Right? Is it better to split on that character? Is it better to sort of functionally do something else to it? But I was mentioning URLs, and just in case I wasn't clear, in the UK, it's .uk.co, right? And that has messed up a lot of people when trying to find what, whether something's a .com or a .edu, right? Like I've seen folks like, oh, I'm going to block anything that's not a .com, .edu, or .org email address. Been there, done that. Don't ask me why they wanted to do that. That worked right up until they got a professor. This was out of school who had a UK. They had moved here from one of the universities in the UK. They kept that thing. Things went boom for them. So bad. Right. List get at. Now this is great. You're going to use this a ton. So this is getting the value at a particular index position inside of a list. So you need something in position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and whatever. You need to return back that value. You're going to put in the list, the position, again, list start at 1, custom delimiter if you have one. We're going to grab the thing in position 2, banana. There you go. Custom delimiter, I think. Wait, this is custom? No, we're going to grab here the first thing and the last one. All right. List rest. So list rest is an interesting one. We can grab the first item, right, of a list, but what happens to the rest of them? Well, here you go. List rest is literally that. It's taking everything except the first item inside of a list. So if that item is a title and the rest of it, like let's say that's one layer inside of bullets and then everything else is inset by 1, you can grab list first for the main big bullet and then list rest for everything else underneath it. That's one example of where you could use this. So you just pass in the list, We've got 4 items here, apple, banana, orange, grape, and we're going to return back banana, orange, and grape. That's everything but the very first one. Yeah, that's a good question, Phineas. And this actually kind of falls into, so mid is you bring up a good point. We've got um, we've got positional stuff in strings, and lists are strings, right? So again, like there's places to play here, and it's one of, I think mid would be maybe a tiny bit more complicated to get something out of something, but you're more likely to get what you actually want potentially. I'm not sure. So and then the final one for access, this is not necessary. This is more getting metadata about the list, but this is going to pull back the number of elements. This is very useful for counting the number that's coming back, right? So if you don't get anything back, right, or you you need to loop through a number of them, this is a way to do that, right? So you figure out the list length, and there you go. So, and for data analysis and that sort of thing. So here we go. We've got four things here, right? Apple, banana, orange, grape. I'm going to output the number of items. It is 4. Now here's the fun one. We talked about this earlier. Non-delimited string. Apple, banana, orange, grape. All in one, right? That is a list. And it's a list with length of 1. So it is technically a list. And there you go. Maybe not so useful, but I don't know. Maybe it is useful. How about searching? Searching and filtering. So let's look at list find. So if you want to figure out where in a list, or if something exists in a list, you can use list find. And list find returns back either the index position of the item, in this case, case sensitive, or returns 0, the Boolean false, basically, if nothing comes back. So if you're checking membership, for example, or auth, some sort of auth thing, right? You can potentially check to see, is you have a list of different things that someone is able to do, read, write, whatever. Can they juggle data? Nope. It returns 0, and therefore it doesn't work. So we're gonna put in a list apple, banana, orange, grape, our favorite fruits, and I want to find where banana is in it. It's position 2. What about mango? Where's mango in that? It's not. It's not. So that's going to return back 0. Again, here, as I mentioned, this is case sensitive. So we've got a list of colors here with the first letter uppercase, very important. Looking for uppercase RED. That does exist. Lowercase does not. And all the money for what the next one is, list find no case. So we're going to see a lot of these. I'm going to have the actual function and a no case version of it. It's exactly the same as list find, except it is case insensitive. So you're going to put in the list the value, potentially a delimiter. And you can see here we've got our colors with the first letter upcased. Even if you throw in lowercase RED, it's still going to return back that its position is here. So there you go. List contains. Okay, so this actually checks to see if this contains a specified substring. Okay, it's different than list find, right? So list contains can find pieces of strings inside of lists or patterns, right? Text analysis, we can look for, bad words or partial bad words, things like that inside of text or blogs or whatever, right? So we're going to put in the list, we're going to put in the substring, and then potentially the delimiter between items. So here we've got a list of files. We're going to look to see if any of those files have the word config in them. Like maybe there's a config text, maybe there's a config.json. We want to know if there's any kind of config inside of that. Config does exist, and it's in position 1. And we can return that back if we wanted to by using list find or list get at, sorry. Now, does it contain JS? Is there anything with JS in it? No, there isn't one. So there you go. Keep in mind, this is case sensitive, right? So here we've got laptop, keyboard, mouse, monitor, all having a uppercase beginning. If we check for the entire lowercase laptop, it doesn't come back. But if we just do a substring of lap with an uppercase, it does work. All right. No points for the next one because we all knew it was going to be list contains no case. Exactly the same. Substring, ignoring case, case insensitive, same kind of thing. We've got config text with an upper, and we're going to look for lowercase. We're going to find it. JS just doesn't exist anywhere in it, and so that's going to return back a 0. List filter. We're going to start getting to some fun ones that you may not have dealt with before. Some of these have been added recently in some of the more recent ColdFusion updates that have happened. So list filter actually creates a new list. So this is transformative. Sorry, not transformative. It creates a new item that contains only elements that pass a function, a callback, right? So if you want to only return portions of a list that have certain elements that are in there, data validation, subsets, things like that. So it's a little more complicated than things that we've seen before. We've got a list, we've got a callback, and potentially a delimiter. So here we go. We're going to pass list filter. This is the list here, right? Numbers. Now we're going to call a function, and we're going to return any value that's mod 2. And that's going to bring us back all the evens. So there you go. So filter for even stuff. Now, note, val. As I mentioned earlier, numerics, if you want to cast them, it's a good idea, right? Just belt, suspenders, all that stuff. Any words here that are longer than a particular length. So we're going to return anything where the length of the string that's coming in as word, right? So that's each individual item that it's looping through is longer than 4 characters. The only 2 in this list are elephant and rhinoceros. So there you go. And really fun one. So this one's super useful. This one is super useful. Removing dupes. So this happens a lot when you have lists that are passed in, like maybe having people suggest desserts, right? What do we want to have for dessert? I want cake. I want eclairs, right? I want ice cream. I want cake, right? So now you've got a dupe in that list. And instead of looping through and trying to do matching and all that, you don't have to do that. You can just use list remove dupes, list, and there you go. So we've got orange, banana, apple, grape, banana. Got apple twice, banana twice. Remove the dupes, and there you go. Apple, banana, orange, grape. Done, 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 and done. File list. I mean, this would be kind of weird if you had the same name files. I mean, that probably would never happen, right? but maybe this is an entry by someone externally of all the files they want to see highlighted or locked or something, right? So you want to make sure you don't try to do things twice. All right, coming along, 15 minutes to go, and still a lot left. List map. Okay, we're getting into sort of the complicated stuff. This is stuff, again, that you probably may or may not have seen before. This, again, uses a callback function, and it applies that function to each element in a list. It maps to each element in a list, and then creates a new list with the transformation that's there, right? So if you want to do a cast on a set of data and you want to do it all, if you want to format stuff, upcase, lowercase, right? Whatever, insert stuff in the middle of it, whatever you want to do. Yeah, it's good for ETL. We're going to call list map with the list name and the callback. Here we go. We've got a list. I want to return back every single item as uppercase here. So I want to transform them. So instead of looping and doing it upcase and adding that to a new list, right? That's the other way that you could have done this. It's how we did it before this was added in, I believe, 2019, maybe 2021. I'm not sure. You don't have to do that. You can just use this, put the callback in, and then boom, the new list has everything uppercased. Here, we're going to transform all of the values of these numbers by multiplying them by 2, right, and return that back. This is useful, by the way, for data, right? If you need to take data and evenly spread it out, right, to get, because sometimes stuff is just too tightly mapped. You can actually create really nice, like more visually appealing or informational data sets and visualizations by transforming the data in a particular way. There's a good way to just take all that data and just transform it at once with the same particular transformation, right? So that's something that people can do. So here it returns back 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There you go. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. List each. Okay, so again, this is doing a callback function for each element in a list, but this doesn't create a new list. So you can use this to, for example, like log things. Iterating through a list when you don't need to return something back, right? Some error handling potentially could be there. Processing things. Again, it's the list name, the callback. So here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through this, and I'm not doing anything transformationally to the list. I'm not getting a list back out of this in any way. All I'm doing is I'm writing to the screen the value of each item, right? I'm just dumping it here. So again, like if you've got something that's processing and that processing list is being done maybe offline or async and returned back to the screen, you want to kind of go by step inside of it. This is another way that potentially you could do that. Here we're validating each address as it comes through. Now, please don't use this. I swear to Athena, if I get an email from somebody that said, hey, we used your code to try to figure out if an email address is a real email address, and gosh golly darn it, it didn't work, I am going to just delete your Felix cache from here. And I can do that. I have a button. It just does that for people. So, which actually honestly would probably help things. So here we go. We've got John at company.com, Jane at company.com, both valid, right? Invalid email, oddly enough, is not a valid email. And then I was actually counting the number and I put that out here. Neat. Now you can use this flow and use a real regex, right? To figure out if something is structured like a real email, but gosh, those those regexes can get really, really complicated. All right, that's list each. List reduce. Again, we're throwing a callback into this. We're throwing a list and getting a callback. This processes every single element and it accumulates or concatenates or calculates, depending on what's in it and what you're doing, and returns back one single thing. All right, so if you need to calculate a total, for example, building complex items, like combining things together. Again, this is good for ETL type things, where you need to collapse a set of data because you want things like a sum. So here we go, the easy thing here. We've got a sum. These are, maybe these are like your kids' grades. Might want to have a little talk with them about some of these. They're not great. And we're going to use list reduce. I'm going to pass in the function. We're going to return the accumulator plus the value of the item. We're going to start at 0. And then we throw the total out. So there you go. The total of that is 150. There you go. Easy peasy. Here we're going to concatenate strings into a sentence. Hello world ColdFusion development. It's not really a sentence, but whatever. Let's pretend it is. We're going to list reduce the words, and we're just going to combine them together with a space in between them. And there you go. Now, the intelligent folks among you here immediately saw how you could do this exact thing with a little bit less work, right? Anybody, any guesses how you could do this exact same thing with a heck of a lot less code? Anybody? Yeah, that's right. Brian's got it. List replace delim. Yep, exactly. In that particular case, the delimiter was a comma. We're replacing it with a space. Boom, boom. You got it. All right, list sort. So oftentimes we'll get lists that are just sent to us haphazardly. Things are being added. Names are being added, for example, to a directory, right? Now, why you're keeping those in a list, I don't know. That's between you and God, I guess. Probably a good time to move that data into a different format. But hey, listen, I'm not going to judge. I'm going to judge a little. So let's sort this list alphabetically. So we've got orange, apple, banana, grape. Obviously, that is not in alphabetical order. We're going to go ahead and we're going to output the original. We're going to output the sorted one. Sorted one, yep. Apple and banana and grape. Yep, those are correctly sorted. What if we want to reverse it? You can actually pass descending into it, and that will actually come down the other way. Now you'll notice something. I'm passing text in. So this is acting on this as though it's text. Okay, that's kind of important because if you want to do numbers, you're actually going to want to have to sort it as a number, as a numeric, I should say. So you do need to pass that in, right? So just keep that in mind. This is we're playing in the world of duck typed auto casting fun with a capital F, as we all love. But hey, it makes our lives easier and makes our lives harder sometimes, right? All right, what if you are just sick of lists? You're done. Drop mic. I don't want this to be a list anymore. I want to refactor it, but it's still coming in as a list. List to array. There you go. So very, very useful. I use this so much, right? Because often, as I said, things exist as lists. They really, really do. It's not that they are uncommon. In fact, quite the opposite. But as I mentioned earlier, there's problems with delimiting and all that sort of stuff. So sometimes you just want to throw this up into an array and then use that array for whatever you want to get up to. Very easy. You pass in the list. It's going to assume that the delimiter is comma as usual, but if you're using pipes, they're there. Brian mentioned he converted from list to array and vice versa to use list functions or array functions. Absolutely. And that's a very common use case. Now, those two things often do have some overlap, right? Like we've got, and that's coming up next month, by the way. Thank you. That's a great transition to me telling you next month we're having a ColdFusion fundamentals class on arrays. So there you go, right? And we'll talk about all the built-in functions in arrays and why you should use them and when you should use them and all that good stuff. So, but that's a really good usage. So here we go. We've got a list of fruit. We're gonna want to figure out like some things in arrays, like maybe everything else is arrays, and we want to potentially concatenate two arrays together, things like that. There's so many reasons that you could move it over. Maybe you want to pull the first element out of the array, whatever you're doing. Here you go. We're going to pass it in. The length of the new array is 4. The first element is apple. The last element, if you do an array length on it, just to show you it is an array, it really is, I promise, is grape. Boom. There you go. Pretty easy. List qualify. Okay. So I mentioned earlier Python, right? Python will take quotes and surround them around an element if it's a string, right? If it's numeric, it won't, and it demarcates them with brackets around it. If you are working with a Python team, or if you're using my trick from Dev Week and you're using Python and ColdFusion yourself, you drop Python in and you're playing with it, and you need to pass a list in, you're going to have to convert some of the items, right? And so one of the things you can do here is you can use list qualify and run that. You can actually do a test. You could do, you could check each item to see if it's a string, right? Check the type of, and if it's a string, run list qualify against the item, right? So yeah, it's the other thing that it's very useful for, which I've used this actually a ton for SQL in like clauses. If you're actually looking to test for something inside of a SQL in, I'll just show you that real quick here, right? So if you're looking for qualified usernames and you're selecting star from users, never select star in production. I'm looking at you guys right now. Don't do that. From users, where username in, but you want to have those names in a particular set, right? And those, they need to have quotes around them. They're not going to in a thing. You could loop through it, add a quote, have the thing, add a quote. Like you could do that, but why? You can use list qualify. And there you go. And list query program can create a list for those super efficient in clauses. That's true. That's true as well. But lots of different things that you can do here. This is an example, by the way. This is I apologize. This is nightmare fuel here, but I'm doing this to show a point, because the first thing a lot of people think of when they see list qualify is, oh, cool, I could use this to make tags, HTML tags, or I could use this to build JSON or whatever, right? No, no, kind of provisionally, right? If you need something that has a left and right side, then no, it won't work, because list qualify, you can't put something on the start and something on the end. It'd be cool. Maybe I should put that as an ER. But so here I'm going to list qualify. I'm adding a bracket, and my goodness, it's left bracket and then left bracket and then the pipe separator, and I'm crying. Like I need soap in my brain. Like, what happened here? This is awful and very hard to read. So don't do that. Just in case you all had ideas of using that for that particular item, you don't want to do that. All right, let's look at list analysis. So how many times does a number or a list value occur. Earlier, we talked about removing dupes. Cool. That's cool if you want to do that, but maybe you want to count how many times a dupe shows up, right? Doctor's office, how many times has a patient reported in the last year that their happiness level is a 5, right? For example, you could return that back. Analyzing the frequency of items is useful for data visualization as well. You could pass this into CF chart. Quality checks, make sure that things aren't repeating, right? Without destroying it, without blowing things up. Instead of removing the dupes, you could test for them here. So we've got the list, the value that we're looking for to see how many times it's there, and then potentially a custom delimiter. Apple, banana, orange, apple, grape, banana. I want to count how many times banana is in there. I want to count how many times apple. So apple show up twice, banana show up twice. Now keep in mind, this is case sensitive. And you know what's coming next, don't you? List, value, count, no case. Exactly the same thing. If you don't care about case, this is the one that you want. You're going to throw stuff into it, list, value, potentially delimiter. And here we're going to count out the number of apples and bananas, even though they're different cases. So there you go. Different use cases potentially, but still useful. Oh my gosh, I'm 1 minute over. I'm sorry. I am almost done. Okay. Replace list. So this replaces multiple values in lists, a batch, using lists of search and replacement, right? So it's a bulk text replacement operation. It's great for data transforms, right? For like normalization of data. If you want to, take a bunch of stuff and replace all of those things, maybe you have a particular way of saying things that's changing, right? You're calling something different and you want to do all of it kind of at once without looping over and over and over again, template processing, character encoding and conversions, things like that. So what we've got is the string that that we're going to replace in there, right? So replace multiple values at once. So text, the text that we're replacing is hello world, how are you today? We're going to find hello world, how and you, and we're replacing at these positions, right? So hello is getting replaced with hi, earth is getting replaced with world, what, how, and there you go. Hello world, how are you today turns into hi earth, what are we today? Which maybe you need to go see the doctor because you're happy. Some level is off. I'm not sure if that's what you're telling people. The cat and the dog are friends. Someone in SEO said, hey, listen, people don't like cats and dogs. They love kittens and puppies. Cool. Let's replace cat with kitten, dog with puppy. Boom. The kitten and the puppy are friends. Aw, so cute. And finally, replace list, no case. Exactly the same, except that we're ignoring case in every case. Sorry. So we've got the string, the two lists, potentially delimiter, hello world, uppercase, how are you today? Find list, hello world, how are you? Sorry, hello world, how you? Hi earth, what we? And then we're going to replace it, even though world was being replaced, lowercase, hi earth, what are we today? Still ends up showing up. There you go. Good to go. Okay. Somehow I'm only 4 minutes over. My bad, y'all. My bad. But that was a lot. That was 26 different functions and lists. There are more in arrays, so I don't know. I'm going to have to drink more coffee before the next one. Here's how to get in touch with me. Anybody can email me, takata@adobe.com. I mean, heck, most of you guys have my phone number. LinkedIn, please connect with me on LinkedIn if you would like. Our YouTube channel is /Adobe ColdFusion /videos. This video will be there. So come and see it, or if you want a refresh, or send your friends. And then, as I mentioned, by this afternoon, The code here, after I fix that one error, oops, will be on Adobe ColdFusion webinars. There'll be a folder very clearly named CF Fundamentals and the name of this one, which is lists. Awesome. So there you go. Let's see. Yeah, that Brian, I swear it's going to be a 9. Like there's so many. I think there's like almost 40. Yeah, there's a lot. There's like 10 more. You're welcome, Phineas. I really appreciate that. I was gonna. That's so funny that you mentioned John McCarthy. I actually was gonna make a lisp joke at the beginning. So I love it. Yeah. John, thank you for coming. John, I know it was pretty early in Hawaii for you, so thanks for doing this instead of getting some awesome surfing in. Hopefully, you can still catch some waves later. Maybe I don't know how the surf is looking today. And there you go, Brian Lang. By the way, I'm just going to throw this in before I stop recording. Make sure if you are not signed up yet for ColdFusion Summit, you do not want to miss this year's summit. Well, however you can get there. It's going to be lit, y'all. It's going to be amazing. 30th anniversary. The swag is going to be legit. You will be sad. I can tell you that right now. You'll be sad if you cannot make it. So I'm just saying, it's a good place to, if you're looking for a job, if you're looking to hire, there's plenty of people in both particular camps there to talk to. We've got great, amazing talks, including for the very first time, a live podcast with Ryan from XBite and our amazing pal, Ben Nadal. We'll be up there talking about AI in hiring, AI in development, where that's going. We're going to take questions and comments from everyone in the audience. We're taking over the entire main hall for that. So there's going to be hundreds of you in there. It's going to be amazing. So definitely try to come. All right. And with that, I'm going to